We ended up throughout the course of our growing up years being married 6 different times to 5 different men. So as a result, our home life was very chaotic. It was unstable. As children, you're not really sure what to expect from one day to the next. The love and wantedness was important. And that was ultimately what I started searching for as I continued to get older. And that led to a lot of people pleasing, a lot of fear-based actions, making sure that I was not left alone in other relationships.
Asked for that the tools that you're giving through this conference and the different stories have moved me to a place that's deep in my heart.
I really have enjoyed this conference, just giving me the reminder that God is with me and God loves me, and that gives me the courage to continue to keep going forward.
It is so refreshing to be with other ladies in Christ and to learn more about the Word of God. Also learning about that all of us, even in our brokenness, Jesus comes in and heals us. So I am enjoying this to the fullest.
It really touched my heart, and I want to proceed with learning more. You've opened God's Word to me, and I pray for more healing. Thank you.
We're so glad that you brought this conference here, and we're hoping you have another one next year.
I love all the speakers. I love the music.
She arises!
Welcome to the Room to Bloom podcast, equipping you to live redefined, renewed, and restored. I'm your host, Julie Rebboah. Let's tackle this week's topic. Today I'm joined by Tonya Peck, a childhood trauma survivor, a former healthcare provider, and an inspiring coach behind Motion and Mindset. If you've wrestled with insecurity in your closest connections, imagine stepping into a future of clarity, hope, and lasting transformation. So listen closely. Your breakthrough could start now. So welcome, Tonya.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Tell us a little bit more about you and your business, Motion and Mindset.
So I started a wellness coaching business about 2 years ago after being in healthcare for several years and just feeling led to create more of an opportunity for an impact for women of faith, just overcoming some of the things that we'll be talking about today around releasing past guilt, shame, anxiety, or depression over things that may have happened in the past and how we can really move forward in a healthy way, reframing those experiences to really be the best that we can be for ourselves and for those around us. And of course, just to be able to step into the life that God has planned for us and meant for us.
And that is such a worthy goal, to be the best version of ourselves for us, for God, and for others, so we can step into that abundant life, because He absolutely has a plan and a very meaningful purpose for each person. So I'm glad you shared that. So you kind of touched on your background a little bit. Could you tell us more about your childhood trauma that was mentioned earlier and how conflict became associated with feelings of fear or relational breakdown, or causing you to think that conflict just meant divorce was coming?
So my sister and I lived with our mom throughout our growing up years, and she was an amazing mother. But one of the things that I felt she was concerned about was making sure that we had the best life possible. And for her, that meant if a situation didn't maybe feel safe or secure, or she wasn't able to navigate some challenges that they were having in that relationship, then she abandoned that relationship and moved on to another one. And she was challenged with some health issues, some mental health issues. And, especially in the 70s, that really wasn't something that a lot of people talked about or really were able to seek help for. She ended up throughout the course of our growing up years being married 6 different times to 5 different men. One, of course, in the beginning was my dad. And then she married my sister's dad. And then from there, I just had relationships and marriages that ended up being unhealthy. And as a result, ended in divorce and then moved on to the next thing. So as a result, our home life was very chaotic. It was unstable. As children, you're not really sure what to expect from one day to the next. Having a stability in a mother, but in terms of the father figure and not really sure where that love is coming from and affirmation, where that that wantedness as a child that you're looking for is coming from. So for me, as a result of that environment, it was really feeling that the love and wantedness was important. And that was ultimately what I started searching for as I continued to get older. And that led to a lot of people pleasing, a lot of fear-based actions, making sure that I was not left alone in other relationships. And ultimately in our marriage that you talked about, we've been married for 35 years. So I'm very thankful for that. God definitely had his hand in us getting together and navigating all of those growth moments that we've had. And for the listener too, that doesn't, sometimes we feel like our past is going to define our present or our future. And that if we came from a home of divorce or we came from a home of addiction, that those things are going to follow us. And that absolutely does not have to be the case. You can take the best of the situation and then you can leave the worst and build on it and grow from it for better, for yourself and for your future. So I'm very proud of the fact that with all odds against us, we've been able to have a healthy marriage, but a lot of that has been as a result of just growing and learning and becoming aware of those habits that were unhealthy back in one time.
Thanks for sharing the hope, because there's so many of us who have come from broken homes, from divorce, and sometimes multiple marriages. I know my dad was married 3 times himself. And so it really does create some instability in even your relationship with that parent, because the dynamic changes depending on who their spouse is or their girlfriend is at that point in time. And so it's constantly shifting. But you mentioned that there were some bad habits that you found yourself in. And I was wondering if you could elaborate on that.
In an early age, I really needed relationships. So I found relationship, in boyfriends, probably at a much earlier age than, I should have, I would say, but just seeking that loving and that wanting. And so in those relationships, before there would be conflict, I would break up with them and have someone else in the wing. So that was kind of leading to that, never wanting to be alone, never wanting to have a conflict occur, because I didn't know really what that looked like. As a child, my mom, she was trying to protect us from seeing, negative conversations and negative emotions. But as a result, we really didn't know that there was conflict until that person was leaving the home. So we never really saw that modeled of how to have a difficult conversation, what healing can come from that, how there can be growth, and then ultimately a new day that starts better. So because we didn't see that modeled, we really didn't know what that even looked like. And so with relationships, I always made sure that I had something in the wings before I let another relationship end. And then I connected the dots in a way that loving and wanting meant people pleasing, meant physical touch, meant promiscuous sex, and meant that if that was happening, then that meant I was being loved. And of course, now as an adult, you realize that that's unhealthy and that's not fact. But in that kid logic, in survival mode and doing what we think is the right thing to do, that's really how I found that loving and wanting, since I didn't have that consistency in the home environment.
I appreciate you being vulnerable and sharing with us, because so many people have a similar experience where they don't know how to resolve conflicts, and conflicts seem and feel scary. And so they avoid them and they seek love in ways that God didn't intend for us to. So what was the turning point when you realized, okay, this pattern that I recognize in myself is not healthy and I should probably work on that?
That's a great question. In those junior high years, as things evolved and my parents noticed that there were some behaviors that I was exhibiting that they felt needed some attention, they took me to counseling, actually. And I chose not to engage in that. Honestly, I think that I was old enough at that point, like I was 12, 13, to realize that there was a lot of other unhealthy things going on. And I was not really sure why I was the one, honestly, that was being taken to counseling. So I did not engage. And after a couple visits, thankfully, the counselor told them, this is probably a waste of time and money. And so as a second plan B option, get me to a better place, we started going to a Bible teaching church. And before that, we had gone to church at different times, but it was really more around the holiday, like Christmas, Easter. We were able to attend a vacation Bible school in our neighborhood, which was great. So you kind of had little glimpses of God and what a church environment looks like in that community, but nothing that was a constant. It's amazing how God works, because, in the moment, it was okay, we're going to try to problem solve. Let's go to church. But it was really the beginning of me seeing in the high school youth group, which is where I started to attend as we continued to go, that the room was filled with people that loved and enjoyed each other for who they were. Not for what they brought to the relationship, not for being someone that they weren't, not for pleasing them, fitting into that mold of what was acceptable, but they genuinely had fun. They genuinely enjoyed each other. And that was really the first time, that was my summer of my 8th grade year, that I saw that being modeled. And I wanted that. You know how they say we need to be examples of Christ. You know, we might not be saying out loud that we're followers or what our beliefs are, but by our actions and our words that, you know, people should know. And that was definitely modeled in there. It was just a piece. And I wanted that piece. And that led to me exploring more what a relationship looked like with Jesus, and that it was a growth process. And as a result, I chose to go to a Christian high school. I was going into the high school and knowing I was new in my faith, and some of those potential temptations, I guess, you know, would be at a public high school. So I really feel I wasn't trying to avoid something. I was really trying to continue to grow by choosing the Christian high school and being a part of that and really embracing that opportunity that was available. So that was really the first glimpse of what God had intended in terms of our relationships and serving each other and just being our best authentic self without.
So it sounds like being plugged into a church youth group was really the place where you began to see different types of relationships, that they were not conditional based on performance or asking you to do things that you shouldn't be doing. And so it seems like exposure to that right community led you on a path to become closer to God and starting to overcome some of those beliefs that you had. And so how did God meet you in those limiting beliefs that had you maybe going down the wrong path at that age? How did he meet you and put you on that new path?
I believe just seeing those healthy relationships modeled. So that was key. Seeing that unconditional love, seeing that empathy, seeing that genuine caring, and really exposing me to what that looked like without having to bring something to that relationship for others. So I feel like it was just really an eye-opening opportunity that there was more and he intended more for us.
Are there scriptures that really spoke to you at that point in time, or prayers or spiritual disciplines that you started practicing that really enhanced your relationship with God and started transforming your identity?
I love Psalms, and Psalms 139:14, I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. So being still in that he created us, you know, for good, and every part of us, you know, the things that we feel maybe are flawed or that we're searching, but then also all, you know, the abundance that we have to offer as well. So really embracing that and knowing that we were created in his image and that it's a beautiful thing to really just sit in that and be confident in that.
So wonderful, because God does place us sometimes with the right people or the right group as a nudge in the right direction. I'm so glad that happened for you around the 8th grade period, because for some people it could be a little bit later in life. But I bet everybody's wondering what the 7 primal questions are and how that relates to this conversation. So could you explain what those are and what they do?
So in my coaching, I came across Mike Foster, and he wrote a book called The 7 Primal Questions. It really helped me just connect a lot of the dots about why we operate the way that we do, the things that we feel are important as children, and then bring that into our adult life. So it boils down to 7 questions, and all of us has one that we're primary. We all, based on our childhood experience, tend to develop a need that we really base our priority on, and we seek to feel that need as we continue to evolve and grow into our relationships and find who we are as people. And so the 7 are: 1 is, am I safe? The 2nd is, am I secure? The 3rd is, am I loved? The 4th is, am I wanted? The 5th is, am I successful? The 6th is, am I good enough? And the 7th is, do I have purpose? And identifying which need is most important has helped to open up my awareness of why I chose to behave the way that I did. And for me, because of my family of origin, I am in that, am I loved? Am I wanted? So as a child, that helped to fill in some of those gaps of why I leaned into more the people pleasing. Behaviors of seeking for, love and acceptance in physical relationships and those types of things. So it helped me to see that I wasn't a bad person or flawed, but that because of the need that was created and I was trying to figure out how to fill that, those led to some of those behaviors and beliefs. And so I feel what the primal questions helped is that because in traditional, I would say counseling or in the past, we really focus on behaviors. So I'm in, the fitness world and it's a lot about don't eat this and do work out and don't drink too much. Don't be mean, be a good person and all these things. And so, but behaviors can last for only so long. We can change our behavior and then maybe we have a bad day or maybe we have a setback or a relationship that is feeling challenged. And then we might revert back to the things that we used to rely on. So becoming aware of our needs and really seeing that as the core basis, if you will, and then those needs shape our beliefs and our behaviors, which then our beliefs and our emotions, which shape our behaviors. So rather than starting at the top and trying to change the behavior, it's more like looking at the core and seeing what drives your beliefs and emotions. And then you can move forward in a healthier way with those behaviors. So it's just a lot of awareness, a lot of reflecting, seeing what needs that you have in order to go about having them be met in a healthy way, and noticing when you aren't getting that need met, maybe some of the unhealthy behaviors that you may tend to revert to, and being able to notice that sooner than later.
Yeah, that's so helpful because there's so much shame around why do I do that? I thought I overcame this, but I went back to it. And then people feel shame and then they get stuck in a cycle. And so it sounds to me like when you've got awareness and then you recognize the underlying need, then you're able to address it in a healthier way without that self-condemnation that I am a horrible person. Nobody could love me. God can't forgive this, because he absolutely does love you and can forgive. He just wants us to get set on the right path. And so it sounds like these 7 primal questions can get people onto a healthier path.
Yes, absolutely. And the premise is when we're in our sweet spot, when you're having like a great day, when you are feeling loved and wanted and good enough, then you're operating where God wants us to be, where we are maximizing our gifts, we're maximizing our impact. And that question is being answered from those to us from those around us with a yes. So that's where we're in our sweet spot. And really the struggle becomes when, let's say for me, am I wanted? And I'm in a situation where that maybe is being answered with a no or a maybe, then that's when I might tend to go back to unhealthy behaviors to try to change that to a yes. So it's, again, a process of being more aware. And when you're in, because we all have those relationships and work environments and social settings where someone may say something or do something that kind of makes you go, that little like, oh my gosh, like, I don't know, maybe they don't like me or maybe I'm not good enough, but really to recognize that and turn that into the statement of, even though maybe the enemy, I believe, is very much at work in this as well, where he knows our weaknesses. He knows what our doubts are and our fears. And if he can get that little opening into the door, then he can push it wide open. So being aware on a spiritual level as well, but being able to turn that question of, am I wanted, into a statement of, I am wanted, I am loved, I am good enough, and to really speak truth into that rather than wait until we're in those unhealthy behaviors to really get that recognition and awareness.
Yeah. So you mentioned that there's a sweet spot. And then you mentioned also that these primal questions, maybe the area that we were struggling, can actually become a strength. Can you talk more about that?
The thing that we need most, we give the best. So for those of us that do need that love and that wanted, we are amazing at giving that to others. So in the primal question 1 and 2, that's those people are really gifted at protecting, gifted at seeing potential obstacles that might harm people. They're the firefighters, the, healthcare workers, all those types of things. So if your question is safety or security, then you have an amazing gift of protecting others and navigating risk. For those of us that are in that loved and wanted, we're like, they call it the people professionals. We are great at including others, seeking out those that might feel like they're not being included, but really making sure, going above and beyond, helping people feel loved, feel seen, feel just included. And then I'll finish with the other two. The am I good enough and am I successful? They are performance oriented. So they are amazing at making teams grow, at, problem solving, at building companies, like these CEOs. They're just like all about maximizing their gifts and talents in a big project way. And then the do I have purpose? The nonprofits, then that doesn't have to be big things, but just leaning into their purpose of just supporting and encouraging others in their family can be just as impactful. So I think the gift is that when we're operating in that truth of I am wanted, I am loved, then we are able to maximize those gifts to give that to others that may be also searching for that significance. So that's really the opportunity where we get to lead into our God-given gifts and what he has created for us to do, to be that light for others and that example of him here on earth.
This message, I'm sure, is resonating with so many people thinking, yeah, that could be me. So how could someone begin to recognize what their own primal question is, the primary one? Because it sounds to me like there might be some, like a main one and maybe a few that are a little bit lesser. So how could somebody identify their main primal question?
So there's a few questions that you would want to explore. And some of those might be, what emotionally triggers you? What makes you angry? What is a no to your primal question? So for example, when you feel anxious or uncertain, what types of things are happening around you? What is your message to the world? That could help kind of identify what's important to you. Maybe if you were a child back in your family home, what was it that you would have wanted a parent to say to you? And if you're a parent, what message would you want to share with your child? So that kind of cues into things that really speak to our heart and will help us to identify things that are most important. And to your point, there's an overlap. Sometimes some of us, what we need maybe even in a work environment would be different in a relationship environment. So it's to be aware of that, but just thinking about what triggers you and what you're passionate about. And that can kind of start to cue into the things that mean the most to you, that then will kind of highlight the needs that you have to feel secure and to feel whole.
So let's say somebody has an idea of what their primal question is. How can they begin to shift that into a positive, into a strength?
So for example, like, am I loved? I will really focus on just helping others be seen, to help others feel wanted and included. And so just maximizing your gifts. So what you need the most is what you give the best. So just thinking about those as your gifts and really maximizing those in your own self, in your work environment, in your relationships, those types of things.
So could you give us a few examples of how you could help others feel loved in a healthy way?
Empathy, honest communication, affirmation, encouragement, physical touch, hugs, eye contact, including them in an activity, inviting them, asking for their opinion. Those are just different types of things to really bring people into that connection, into that more intimate setting and helping them feel seen.
I'm really glad that you provided some concrete examples of ways that people can begin to connect and include and love others in a way that's healthy for them and for their friends or their loved ones.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Providing a safe space, is so important.
Yeah, exactly. So what would you say to somebody who's listening and really fears that conflict means that they're going to be abandoned if they don't succumb to the people pleasing?
That's a challenge. And I think as healthy as we are and as aware as we are, there's still a little bit of hesitation in that. I would say to set healthy boundaries, to know that even having an honest conversation, even though it can be scary, can be an opportunity for growth, not for a setback, and for more closeness and connection. So there have been times in my life when I was nervous to have a hard conversation. Again, not sure if they would still, let's say as a friend, something that kind of was said that maybe I was wanting more clarity around, but nervous to ask what that would be, because then I don't know where that conversation is going to go. Again, we play like all of these scenarios in our mind, like, would they still like me? Or am I wrong? Should I not be thinking this thought? And a lot of overthinking on our part. But once I reached out and I came to them with love and being straightforward and honest, be like, you know what, I am a little nervous about having this conversation because I value your friendship. I want us to learn from this and grow, but I just have a couple questions that I need to ask. And so being vulnerable enough and being upfront and honest and just setting that stage for that honest conversation, and to know that if you come from that place of humility and just seeking connection and seeking a healthier step forward, that person's hopefully going to honor it. If they don't, then maybe that is a cue that their relationship can be something that you don't invest as much time in as you are. If they're not able to meet you halfway, have an honest, healthy conversation and be able to learn and grow from it. But even so, in that friendship environment, it was a miscommunication. It was something that we were able to laugh off. We both felt better after we had that conversation, and we just kept moving. So I think that if we can reframe it as, it doesn't have to be an opportunity for stress and an ending, but it can be really a beginning of a better way of communicating and connecting. But I definitely don't discard the uncomfortableness that it still brings up in me, even after all these years, like I said, with marriage, and just that little voice that says if, or that kind of wants you to stay small or to just swallow it, and like, is it really worth it? I don't know. But the more that you have those conversations, big or small, and the more that you see how it can create a better connection and a better understanding for more open communication go forward, it slowly gets less scary. And you feel a little less vulnerable in walking into that space, and just, praying about it and just being open to what transpires as a result.
That's so important what you said, that you asked questions instead of coming in and
Right.
saying, you said this to me, you did that. It
Exactly.
sets a completely different tone for a conversation and a willingness to engage in dialogue, rather than it being a one-sided yelling match or whatnot.
Yes.
And also the fact that the more you practice, the easier it becomes, because it's now becoming a skill.
Right.
But also that if someone is not willing to engage in a conversation and is maybe defensive or blaming you, then that might be a clue that the relationship may not be very healthy. And if they're not willing to work on it, like you said, maybe invest a little bit less of your time there.
Yeah.
Because you're not receiving the respect that you're giving.
Yes.
So important. But I was wondering if you could leave us with a truth or a practice that really anchored you as you learned to redefine conflict and healthy connection.
It used to be an old Point of Grace song. I don't know if you remember them. They were like a 4 singing ladies, and they were kind of like all the rage back in the day. But they had a song, the title or the tagline was, I don't know what the future holds, but I know who holds the future. And it's just reassuring to me as we go through unsettled times, whether it be in our home environment, in our work environment, in the world environment, that, we don't know what tomorrow will bring, but we know that God is in control and that He will bring all things for good. And we may never see, why certain things happened or why they didn't happen, until later, but just to trust that there is a bigger plan and there's a purpose, and it's all for a beautiful opportunity to share, like for today, my story of how I made mistakes or was able to learn from some of those examples, and hopefully create opportunities for others to feel seen and feel that if they had an experience or somewhere they felt shame in, that by sharing that can open the door for someone else to share their experience and create greater connection and give them hope and healing and reassurance that tomorrow is a new day and that we're not defined by those single moments in time. So I love that phrase, even though it's an oldie but a goodie, just to remember that even though we may not know, that He holds the future. And also in the Psalms 46:10, just be still and know that I am God. Just being still in that moment, even though sometimes I'm not great at at doing that, but that's one of the things I've been working on, is just stillness, quietness, and just listening to that small, still voice rather than to all the loud noise that is around us all the time if we let it.
So beautifully said. And boy, did I have to dig back in my memory bank for that, because I remember that band. So thanks for sharing that. So if anyone wanted to connect with you or find out more about your coaching services, Tonya, how could they reach you?
My website is motionandmindset.com, and there you'll be able to find a little bit more about me. There is a free assessment. So if you're curious, I wonder what my highest emotional need is, what my primary need is, what my gifts and talents would be, there's a free assessment there. It's confidential, and I would email you the information that comes as a result, and then we could discuss more of that. The website has an opportunity to be a part of my weekly newsletter. It's around health and wellness, faith aspect, life aspect. So it's really a great encouragement that I send out on Sunday night, just to help us reset for life, and get some good news and some reframing of thoughts for the new week.
So it sounds like it's holistic wellness.
Yes.
Which is what we all need, because
Yes.
we are a unified body, mind, and spirit in one human.
Absolutely.
In the flesh. So you can reach out to Tonya there, and I will have the link in the show notes so that if you just want to click, you can go right there. Thank you so much for being on with us today, Tonya, and for sharing about your own personal journey and the 7 primal questions and how people can use those to turn them into a strength so that they can move forward into that abundant life with God.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Have a blessed day, everyone. Thanks for joining me. I hope this episode has blessed you. If so, please subscribe, comment, and share. It's a great way to spread the love and keep good content rolling. As a reminder, this podcast is purely for informational and educational purposes only. Listening to content is not a replacement for medical or mental health care. Please make decisions with your personal care providers. Stay tuned for next week's episode. But if you want more content or free resources in the meantime, head over to FromBudToBloom.com. See you next time. Until then, live fully free in Christ.